migration crisis. Chaotic scenes break out in a Budapest train station as Hungarian police halt a train packed with migrants bound for the Austrian border. Meanwhile, Hungary's premier says it's Germany's problem. A look at the power of the image after a photo of a dead Syrian toddler goes viral. Pressure mounts on leaders to take in more refugees and change policies over Mideast crisis. And the Israeli Air Force strikes a military facility in the Gaza Strip after gunfire hits two Israel homes north of Gaza on Wednesday. No injuries are reported on either side.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. Clashes erupted west of the Hungarian capital on Budapest after police tried to force migrants off a train at a refugee camp. The train left Budapest hours after police let migrants into the railway station following a two-day standoff. Meanwhile, European leaders continue to sharply disagree over how to deal with the crisis, with the Hungarian premier pointing a finger directly at Germany. Ayman Siksik asks, why Germany?
Budapest this week. Some of these migrants who arrived here from Syria know very little English, but they all have one word in mind.
Germany! Germany! Germany!
Germany, the desired destination of nearly every migrant arriving on European shores. Why? It is now the only country who will have them regardless of where they first arrived in Europe, in contrast to European Union laws. Established in 2013, the Dublin regulations stipulate that migrants who arrive in Europe must register in the first country they arrive in to prevent internal migration in the continent. Migrants who are apprehended in a different European country after registration are returned as economic migrants to the first European country where they were recorded. But Germany announced it will continue to accept Syrians even if the country was not their first destination, making several other EU countries a gateway to Berlin. Due to its vicinity to Germany, Hungary has become one prime example.
The problem is not a European problem. The problem is a German problem. Nobody would like to stay in Hungary, neither in Slovakia, nor Poland, nor Estonia. All of them would like to go to Germany.
All would like to go to Germany, and Budapest finally gave in. Migrants who had been waiting in the Hungarian capital's train stations with no permission to board the train were allowed to leave for Germany yesterday. After days of waiting, chaos ensued.
Yesterday, Ms. Merkel says you have to register here in Hungary to allow us to cross the border into Germany. But Austria say no, we cannot. Syrian people not allowed to cross. What we have to do?
Chancellor Angela Merkel continued today to make clear statements about Germany's commitment to providing refuge to the migrants.
Sondern die Pflicht heißt auch,
there is a duty to provide protection for people who need it, and the Geneva Convention does not only apply to Germany, but also to every European member state.
But what's waiting for Basil and his family in Germany? Part of the attraction for those fleeing war-torn countries such as Syria is the German government's generous laws concerning migrant welfare. According to the country's labor minister, between 240,000 and 460,000 migrants will be entitled to social benefits in 2016. The extra costs incurred to the government for the year range between 1.8 and 3.3 billion euros. Each migrant will also receive a monthly stipend and a work permit after 3 months in Germany. And as the minister explained on Thursday, Germany is already feeling the financial burden.
We need some more fairness when it comes to the question whom is able to invite also refugees. Even when they come first to Germany, we have to distribute them more fair.
The minister went on to say that Germany expects some 800,000 asylum seekers this year alone, and the numbers are creating division in the German public. While Germany is encouraging aid efforts for migrants across Europe, a report by the German Domestic Intelligence Service shows that pro-nationalist attacks against migrants rose by 20% last year, warning of a growing anger at the migrant influx by right-wing extremists in the country. Another reason the migrant crisis has become a moral issue for Germany.
And with me on the phone right now is Judith Lonai-Segi, volunteer at Migrant Aid, is at Budapest railway station. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good evening. Hi.
So, Judith, can you describe for me what is the current situation? What are you seeing right now in front of you?
Right now, I'm in the healthcare room. It's a small center, let's call it like this. There are a couple of doctors and nurses and helpers, volunteers that are taking care of sick patients of all kinds of sickness. We have flu, we have injured legs, a lot. And outside of this room, there are plenty of people, very nice people playing around the children, and they are sitting on the floor. Everyone is feeling fine. There are a lot of them. Today what happened is they opened the train station, which was closed for the last 2 days, and the immigrants wanted to leave to Germany or to Austria, and they didn't let them. Today they opened the train station in the morning, and all the people went inside, jumped on the train. It was a horrible view. They told them that they can take the train to Austria, but actually they took them off at Bicske, which is like 30, 40 kilometers from Budapest. And they are waiting there to take them to somewhere else because they told them they can't go to Germany.
Judith, I believe that you are spending a lot of hours with the migrants. What are they telling you? What are the stories that you are hearing a lot from them?
What, the stories?
Yes.
Well, they are all asylum seekers. They're trying to escape this horrible situation in their own country. Most of them are Syrians. That, as we all know, it's a horrible war with the ISIS and also their own government, Assad. And there are horrible stories. People that their whole family were killed by ISIS. They were injured. People are coming pregnant with very small children. They come by foot, thousands of kilometers. They cross the fence which our government built, and it's with razor blades all over. And some of them get here injured, need medical care. Horrible stories, all kinds.
Yes.
All kinds.
Judith, thank you very, very much for this conversation with us. Thank you. And with me right now is correspondent Ayman Siksa. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So you were asking the question, why Germany, which is amazing by itself, but I want to, first of all, let's try to look at it in let's say 5 years. You know what, not even 5 years, 2 years from now, after they're getting the green light or the green card or their passports or their citizenship. What will happen then? What will happen about integration? What will happen about their education, about the culture? Is there any plan for this?
Well, I think that's the question Germany is at large avoiding right now. It's telling the world or the rest of Europe it needs to set a humane example for letting the migrants in, but we don't seem to be hearing from any German officials of an official plan of how to integrate them within society, within German society. And I think that's what we've learned from the past recent years that we've seen in Europe with the clashes that have been between Europeans and migrants, that this is the answer to migrant life in a different country.
Of course.
Immersion within the culture, and we've seen this in France recently.
Yeah, but what happens when the immigrants don't want to integrate? Because usually what we are seeing, this is not a second generation that has been living in Europe. This is a first generation coming from a totally different culture and wants to live in Europe, which is a totally different culture than his.
That's right. Their main objective, Syrians more so than any other immigrants that are coming to Europe right now, their first motive is to flee the IS, is to flee war, is to flee hardship, economic and security hardship. They're not coming to Europe in order to immerse themselves in the country. Many of them have their own religious lifestyle, which they'd like to keep. Now, what we've seen in Europe in recent years is that Europe has allowed this. France is a prime example, where migrants have been living for several generations separately within their own lives, and now France is dealing with an influx of immigrants who have been there for 2 or 3 generations with views and prospects on life and security, which France does not know how to handle anymore.
If we're looking at Germany, Germany maybe has a good example for it, because the Turks that immigrated to Germany managed to integrate in a really good way. Although in some parts when you're traveling to Germany, you can see that not so much, but they managed to integrate.
That's right. I mean, Germany has a very complex history with immigration, of course. World War II was what started the whole trend of immigration in the 20th century. But I think the main worry right now with what we're seeing with the migrant crisis at this time is that the influx of migrants into Germany is really empowering the extreme right wing within the country. We're seeing more attacks in certain parts in Germany of extreme right-wingers against migrants. Now, that in itself leads to a vicious circle where the migrants are more frustrated, more isolated, and in a few years from now, it could erupt within Germany.
Yes, and with all Europe going more to the right, this doesn't seem like a bright future. Ayman Siksik, thank you very, very much for this. Thank you. The saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words, may be a cliche, but it's also often true. In the current massive migration crisis in Europe, with an ongoing large-scale refugee crisis stemming from the Middle East, one image has done that this week. Ori Shapira looks at the power of the image.
Washed up on Turkey's shore, lifeless. This is the heartbreaking image of the corpse of Aylan Kurdi, a 3-year-old Syrian refugee who died with his 5-year-old brother and mother after their boat overturned on its way to Greece in a bid to enter Europe. In a flash, Aylan has come to illustrate the new migrant crisis in Europe.
We are really not only sad, but we are angry to see Syrians and others sinking down into the overseas. But what in our circumstances we can do?
Aylan is of course not the only one who became an accidental hero, a symbol of a much wider story. In 1936, a woman named Florence Owens Thompson became the migrant mother, the subject of the iconic picture taken by Dorothy Lang. Her concerned look as she holds her 2 sons perfectly captured the spirit of the Great Depression, one of the most difficult periods in American history. Another good example is the unknown protester from Tiananmen Square, another of the most memorable photographs in history, and which, in one image, captured the story of the Chinese civil resistance to the communist regime, defiance doomed to fail.
There were people standing on either side of the street. One of them came out with 2 shopping bags. He stood in front of the tank, and this went on for some time, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Eventually 2 people came from the same side of the road. They took him into the crowd, and he's never been seen or heard of since.
There is no doubt that these pictures and others earned their place in the history of art. But in many cases, they also influence and perhaps even change history. This may be the case of Phan Thi Kum Phuc, who was caught on camera by photographer Nick Ut as she fled in panic from a napalm attack. The cliché says that one picture is worth 1,000 words. If so, then these pictures, coupled with the great effect of the social media, may be worth much more. But how much influence can a photograph have in an indifferent and fast-paced society where images replace each other by the second? It seems that as the world is faced with all these horrific photographs, all that is left to do is watch.
And we will get back to the same image with a conversation with 2 top Israeli photographers about the limits maybe of what we should or should not see or show. And we're going to Gaza. The Israeli Air Force struck a military facility in the Gaza Strip after gunfire hit 2 Israeli homes north of Gaza on Wednesday. No one was injured in the incident in Netiva Sarah or in Gaza. The head of the city of Ashkelon's regional council has demanded the Israeli government do more to boost security. And meanwhile, the IDF has instructed residents of the area to stay away from windows facing Gaza. And we're still in the same region. Rumors on a potential resignation of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas have triggered a roulette of names of his possible successors. One of them, maybe the most dominant, is Mohammed Dahlan, a former Fatah leader who has been in exile for the last few years. Eli Ochenberg takes an in-depth look into the man who could be the replacement of Mahmoud Abbas.
A popular leader with the reputation of a gangster, the protege of a legend who was later accused in poisoning him, a turbulent yet prominent politician with an endless amount of charisma and connections in the high echelons of the global political elite, a millionaire with a soft spot for sleek suits and fancy cars, yet engaged in large-scale ongoing philanthropic activity, bitter rivals, devoted fans, and one big dream, a fierce comeback as the next leader of the Palestinian people. Mohammed Dahlan, or the Pretty One as some of his Israeli colleagues used to call him, is for many the great hope, the bright future of the Palestinians. Now, with intensifying rumors on the impending resignation of his once friend, now arch-rival Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Dahlan's possible return seems closer than ever before.
Palestinian people can no longer tolerate the catastrophe which is called Mahmoud Abbas. From the day he arrived, only disasters happened to the Palestinians. He represents all things evil. He is crazy.
The rivalry with Abbas and an alleged coup attempt by Dahlan sent him into exile in 2011, and to this day, Abbas's people are campaigning against him. But in order to understand Dahlan's power and why he poses such a great threat to the Palestinian president, we need to start from the beginning. Gaza-born Dahlan became politically active in his early years, helping to found Gaza's wing of the Fatah youth movement. His involvement in the association landed him in the Israeli jail, and due to his participation in the First Intifada, he was sent to exile in Jordan and then Tunisia, where he rose in the Fatah hierarchy with the enthusiastic support of Yasser Arafat. His big breakthrough came during and after the Oslo Accords and returned with the rest of the PLO leadership to Gaza in 1994. Then, he was handed the important role of the newly created Preventive Security Service, which was American-funded. Dahlan quickly gained a reputation for ruthlessness, allegedly torturing thousands of Hamas members in Gaza. This power, however, came at a price. Allegation of widespread corruption began to emerge, alongside accusation of collaboration with the Israeli military and the American CIA. But the most important factor was a deterioration in his relations with Arafat. When Abbas succeeded Arafat in 2005, he kept Dahlan on as an advisor, despite his distrust in him. Until today, he accuses him of Arafat's death.
Dahlan said Arafat's mission was over and that a new generation must take over.
Dahlan's rapid fall from grace came in 2007, when a violent Hamas takeover on the Gaza Strip was perceived as his own personal failure. By 2011, the rope around Dahlan's neck got tighter as Abbas drew up corruption and embezzlement charges against him and stripped him of his position. Dahlan then fled the Palestinian territories for the UAE, and rumors has it that ever since he has been plotting his revenge. And indeed, Dahlan has never stopped being involved in Palestinian politics, even if from behind the scenes. During his years in exile, he had built strong ties with Gulf donors and the Egyptian leadership, including President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. The latest rumblings now say Dahlan is gearing up to use these connections and credit to regain a grip in Gaza and possibly seek the Palestinian presidency. But as one who has won himself many enemies, the road to there will not be easy.
Not easy, but really strange. Diplomatic correspondent here with me, Ellie Ochenberg. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
You know, I wonder who works so hard for the really strange reconciliation with Hamas.
Yes, it is a very unique event, because for many years for Hamas, Dahlan was, you know, the symbol of everything they hate. As we've seen in the report, he allegedly used to torture thousands of Hamas activists in the Gaza Strip when he was an official in the Fatah.
His own people were thrown off buildings in Hamas, in the Gaza Strip.
His house in the Gaza Strip was turned into, you know, a Hamas stronghold after he fled Gaza. So it really is a big story. But, you know, something very interesting about Dahlan is that both the Israelis and the Americans really like him. They see him as a pragmatic leader, someone they can do business with. And Martin Indyk, the American diplomat, wrote in his book that he remembers that in Camp David in the nights that Dahlan used to sit with the Israelis, drink whiskey, smoke cigars, and laugh. And he's known to have been partying in Tel Aviv, and really with a strong connection and a deep understanding of Israeli politics and society. And this is something that definitely plays in his favor in this regard. And if he will show some signals of coming back, maybe we'll receive some support behind the scenes from the Israelis.
I wanted to speak with you also about Barghouti, but we will leave it maybe for next week, where you will examine maybe the profile of Barghouti. Thank you very much, of Marwan Barghouti, for whomever is not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy.
And we're going to the Ukraine. Another truce has taken effect in Ukraine, but the chances for renewed violence remains high. The international community is thus seeking a long-term resolution which will address those eastern areas under the control of pro-Russian separatists. One of the ideas gaining action is very familiar to those here in Israel. I-24 News correspondent Charles Bublizer has the idea about two-state solution.
More than 3,800 dead and many multiples more injured. The conflict in eastern Ukraine has taken a massive toll. And while a new truce took effect Tuesday, there is reason to doubt it will hold. Despite a formal ceasefire signed in February between Kiev and pro-Russian separatists, sporadic fighting has continued. Now, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko is moving to grant rebel-held areas more autonomy.
What would happen if the parliament did not vote for constitutional amendments? The fate of a pro-Ukrainian international coalition would be significantly undermined. The grim picture of having Ukraine struggling against the aggressor alone would become a real threat.
The controversial move sparked deadly clashes on Monday between police and Ukrainian nationalists outside of parliament, where the legislation passed the first reading. The concessions are being backed by the West, whose relations with Russia have plummeted to the lowest point since the Cold War. Washington is reportedly pressuring Poroshenko to authorize elections that would legitimize Russian-installed authorities in the east and give the areas they occupy a special legal status. The line coming from Europe is similar, with Germany and France urging Kiev to accept partial self-rule for at least the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. The international community has been down this road before.
The descendants of Isaac and Ishmael have embarked together on a bold journey. Together, today, with all our hearts and all our souls, we bid them shalom, salam, peace.
In 1993, the Oslo Accords saw Israel grant the newly created Palestinian Authority limited autonomy in areas of the West Bank and Gaza. It was not long before the Palestinians began pushing for total independence. More than 20 years on, though, violence has come to define the peace process. The idea of applying a sort of two-state solution to the Ukraine crisis is gaining steam, even seeping into prominent publications.
Even if Russia respected the ceasefire, the terms it seeks for reincorporating the areas it holds into Ukraine
would cripple the country's democracy and independence, which is Mr. Putin's goal. Rather than legitimize Russia's puppet entity, Ukraine would be better off leaving it isolated and forcing Moscow to sustain it.
But questions abound. How long would it take for any pro-Russian micro-entities to be incorporated by Moscow, not unlike its annexation of Crimea in March 2014? Nor will appeasing Russia necessarily tame it, with Putin perhaps eyeing other former Soviet satellites. Moreover, what about other minorities such as the Kurds in northern Iraq, or the Tibetans, for example? Are they too not entitled to independence? Finally, internal opposition to the move might well lead to a full-blown uprising in Kiev. Ironically, dividing Ukraine in the name of securing its future sovereignty could very well risk ripping it apart entirely.
And right now with me here in the studio is correspondent Charles Bilblizer. Good evening. Good evening. Charles, you mentioned there the two-state solution of the Palestinians. When you're saying two-state solutions always comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But when we're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we're talking about a different narrative, a different history, different culture. Is this the same aspect in the Ukraine-Russia crisis?
To a large degree, yes. So you have to understand Ukraine obviously is a former Soviet satellite. So the people living under it during the Cold War, many of them identified very closely with Mother Russia, so to speak. So these individuals, which basically are concentrated in the East, speak Russian. They have Russian customs and traditions, etc., and they identify very closely with Russia. So these are the breakaway little regions that you have, Luhansk, Donetsk, etc., which are basically under the control of Russian-backed separatists now. On the flip side, you have those Ukrainian nationalists who also lived under the jackboot of the USSR. They see it very differently, and they're vehemently anti-Russian, and because of this, they've developed a very pro-nationalist strain within them.
It's like if we're talking about the settlers in Judea and Samaria and the Palestinians who are living in the West Bank, so Judea and Samaria.
Well, it's basically different people had very different experiences. So if you looked at the Palestine Mandate, for example, under British rule, so there are the Palestinians which had one experience under it and the Jews who had a completely different experience under it. And it does lead to competing narratives. And it's led to the idea of splitting them, dividing them into regions that basically they will control themselves.
So, yes.
But it opens up all sorts of questions.
Of course. Can they control themselves?
Can they do this? Basically, if you look at the Palestinians, they've had issues governing themselves.
Security or coordination, but can you talk about security coordination between the Ukrainians and the Russians?
There would have to be some kind of coordination between Ukraine and these sort of breakaway districts. That being said, when it comes to the two-state solution, there isn't very good precedent. So, for example, even if you look at like something like Georgia, which is another a former Russian satellite, you have these breakaway little republics in South Ossetia. If you look at Moldova, for example, which is another former Russian satellite, you have a little breakaway republic, Transnistria. None of them do very well. In Georgia in particular, you've seen intense military conflicts there. So would you really want to create another one of these in the Ukraine? It raises all sorts of questions, also questions of sovereignty.
It ended up with a war, which means that...
In 2008, there was a big one. Will it stop?
Yes. Charles Bilblizer, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And we're going out for a small break. 2 minutes, and I'll be back for the second part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Europe's migration crisis. Chaotic scenes break out in a Budapest train station as Hungarian police holds a train packed with migrants bound for the Austrian border. Meanwhile, Hungary's premier says it's Germany's problem. A look at the power of the image after a photo of a dead Syrian toddler goes viral. Pressure mounts on leaders to take in more refugees and change policies over Mideast crisis. And the Israeli Air Force strikes a military facility in the Gaza Strip after gunfire hits 2 Israel homes north of Gaza on Wednesday. No injuries are reported on either side. Welcome back to the news today. Chinese President Xi Jinping announced today he would cut troop numbers by 300,000 as China held its biggest display of military might in a parade to commemorate victory over Japan in World War II. China's confidence in its armed forces and growing military assertiveness, especially in the disputed South China Sea, has rattled the region and drawn criticism from Washington. She spoke before a parade at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. And with me right now to talk about this a little bit more, correspondent Danny Swibel. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
70 years after, and the world, can we say, changed, especially after we're seeing these images and for migrants and wars everywhere. It seems that it's like time stood still.
Yeah, the world definitely hasn't changed as much as we would have wanted it to have after 70 years. Today in this day, the U.S. right now is celebrating in the place where the Japanese formally signed their surrender, which is on the USS Missouri, which is in Pearl Harbor. So while the U.S. and these veterans are celebrating there, the Chinese took a different way of celebrating the end of the war. They had a big post-war rally showcasing its military might. It's kind of ironic because they obviously are celebrating the defeat of Japan in World War II by showing their intense military might. So it's kind of a weird, strange mixed message to many people in the international community, many of whom decided not to go to this event.
So you're saying that it was like some kind of a show-off?
A bit of a flexing of the muscles, if you will. Obviously, there's a time where China wants to show that they are the global power and remind people that they are the forgotten ally of World War II. It is thought that they sacrificed 14 million Chinese victims because of Japanese militarism. And so it is important for the Chinese to show they are the world's largest army with 2.3 million members. Which is insane. And China has the second biggest defense budget after the U.S. So they, even though Xi Jinping said on record that we want to cut troops and we want to foster in a new peaceful era, his actions are a bit mixed.
He wants to cut troops, but basically he wants to cut troops. Why? Because maybe the economic situation of China is not going so well like he thought that it will?
Well, perhaps, but the funny thing is he didn't mention a date when he was going to cut those troops, so this could just be something he said, but not anything we'll actually follow up on. A few months ago, China surpassed Germany to become the world's third largest arms supplier, so China's definitely involved. Their arms sales have soared 150% in the past 5 years. So they could say one thing, but they're doing another. So we don't know if this is just to send a message or perhaps they have big plans for the future.
The rest of the world is like that, isn't it?
We'll debate this for a while.
Yes, definitely. Danny Swibel, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And Guatemalan President Otto Perez resigned amid a corruption scandal that has gutted his government and plunged the country into chaos just days before a national election. Guatemala's constitutional court yesterday rejected a claim by Perez to reverse a decision that allowed the country's Congress to vote for his impeachment. Perez, Conservatives administration spent much of the year marred in public protest and scandals over corruption allegations against senior officials, several of whom the retired general fired during a cabinet purge in May.
Look at what happened by voting to a party known as the Patriots Party. Look at what happened. Perez just lied. He deceived us. We can't commit this error again, friends. This September 6th, it's important to go out and vote for the national unity of hope. You all know it. Better the old lady you know than you don't.
And with me right now is financial analyst Lionel Friedfeld. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Star Wars?
Yeah, Star Wars is back in business. They're going to release their movie at the end of the year, and before doing that, they're now creating tomorrow what will be the 4th day. They're launching officially all the products, all the merchandising.
Yeah, when you're talking about back in business, you mean back in real business.
In real business, it's a lot of money. Why? Because you remember that Disney bought from George Lucas, Lucasfilm in 2012. And it's a lot of money. Now they're using all the network of Disney, the Disney stores all over the world. They're going to sell Star Wars product, even the competition like toys are on Earth, you know.
Yes.
Last year, they only have like 4 toys in their catalogs. This year, they're going to have 30 products of Star Wars in 6 pages dedicated to Star Wars product. So we're going to be invaded with Star Wars product. And basically, it's not only toys. It could be, it could be clothes. Even Procter & Gamble using Star Wars, for cleaning product for people, like washing
And we're not even talking about the incomes that will come from the movie itself.
Yeah, the movie itself is very separate. Now we're speaking about, because they're launching 3 months before. They're doing, I think it's the highest, the biggest marketing plan ever if you're going to speak about all major retail stores in the US or in Europe or in Asia. Everybody's waiting for that, and they do that actually to prepare, to put pressure, actually.
I'm trying to think, do they really need this PR campaign 3 months before? Isn't this movie selling itself and selling its product without all this PR?
Just to give you an example, last year on specific segment or globally, okay, they were doing great selling Star Wars product, but because they're doing such a PR and marketing, they're going to increase, at least it's forecasted, by 40% the sales of the product. So yes, they do that, and you have also to remember that, like Star Wars is going to be released at the end of the year, will be, the 7th episode, but you also have each year they will release new episode. So it's going to be an ongoing, process, and people are buying that.
Of course people are buying that. Of course they are gaining and we're buying. Lionel Friedfeld, thank you very much. I hope that the movie is good for the fans.
Hope we'll see it soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. And we're going to the planet. In general, a new study by Yale University shows that 15 billion trees are being lost every year because of human action. This disturbing finding joins other research that shows the mass extinction of species in the world. Now, Professor Uri Shanas from Oranim College in Israel has come out with a new initiative to save the planet by organizing an investing group to purchase 1.4% of the Earth. I-24 News correspondent Uri Shapira has more.
They say the Earth is not for sale. Well, according to Professor Uri Shanes from Oranim College in Israel, some of it actually is. Professor Shanes is now forming a special organization called This Is My Earth, or Time, which aims to buy 1.4% of planet Earth.
Everyone, almost every school kids can become a member of this organization. Now, as he become a member, he can also will be able to vote where he wants the money to be invested.
Perhaps this new initiative sounds a bit too ambitious, but Professor Shanes is determined to see it through in order to protect the planet. He and his colleagues are preparing to purchase what they call biodiversity hotspots, pieces of land which host larger amounts of plants and animals.
So some reserves can be open reserves, some would be reserved for scientific research, but the idea is that all reserves will keep the diversity there, will have a long-term program to preserve the biodiversity in the region.
To Shanes, natural extinction is one of the biggest ecological threats we now face. According to the World Wildlife Fund, at least 10,000 species become extinct every year. A recent book by Elizabeth Kolberg defined this era as a sixth extinction and compared it with mass extinctions which occurred before the evolution of man. In recent years, countries and public organizations have increased their efforts to come out with different plans to protect the environment. Only last month, US President Barack Obama launched a campaign for even greater greenhouse gas reduction.
America has to lead the world in transitioning to a clean energy economy.
However, Professor Shanes still believes there is room for private initiatives such as his.
Countries and politicians, they care about their term, they care about, to re-elected. So it's a vicious cycle that it's hard to break.
David Bowie once had a song about the man who sold the world. Now there's a person who's trying to buy it, or at least a small part of it. However, as far as Professor Shanes is concerned, the only benefit he'll see from this transaction will be for the Earth. If not, the price we'll pay will be non-refundable.
Yes, and with me right now here is correspondent Ori Shapiro. Good evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening,
for joining
Lucy.
me. Ori, do we really need private initiatives to save the world after all the education programs and money that we're putting on climate changing and you know, do we really need this?
It depends who you ask. You know, it's a difficult question because, you know, governments puts a lot of money on this. But I think the issue here is that people want to be involved. People want to feel part of communities, you know, with all the Kickstarters and all these initiatives. People want to put their money and to know they're putting the money for good source.
But if you're putting the money and if money in it, because I'm thinking, because when it becomes a business, when you're putting money, eventually what will prevent me from selling it? What will prevent me from actually doing business with the parts that I bought from the earth?
Well, Professor Shenes says that this initiative is a democratic initiative. Everyone has one vote. It doesn't matter if you put $1 million or if you put €1. Doesn't matter. All have one vote, and all can choose equally where they want to put the money, which hotspot they want to invest.
So we know that you know, at the end of the day, the world leaders or governments really invested a lot of money in re-educating us to recycle, to take care of the earth. And still you want to tell me that with everything and all the money that we're putting in there, we're still talking about species that are being extinct?
Yeah, we're talking about the 6th extinction, according to studies. I think the money is not invested in the right places. I think we're still damaging the earth. And, you know, people are not aware of all the consequences. For example, Professor Shenes gave us an example of one community in South America where otters were extinct. You know, it caused a chain of events that caused the death, the disappearance of fish. So all the community suffered from that. All the fishermen, you know, everybody depends on the fish.
And of course, we're talking about also some bees that were...
Yeah, a few years ago in the US, mass extinction of bees, you know, it affected the honey production, of course, and it affected many other things.
So definitely we are not helping our world to become a better or a greener
Well, he says he's optimistic, so let's be optimistic as well.
Okay, I'm staying optimistic with you. Uri Shapiro, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and we're going back to the region. Building a city from scratch, it doesn't just sound difficult, it is. But in the West Bank city of Rawabi, they made it happen. And just 7 years after the project was first announced, families are moving into their new homes. Mirav Savir went to take a look.
Rawabi. Several years ago, it was just a vision. Now the first families are moving in.
We wanted to do a project with a large economic impact for Palestine. We wanted to prove to ourselves first that we can build a Palestinian state. This is one small component, and we wanted to show the world of our ability to build. We are about construction, not about destruction.
A brand new city situated just north of Ramallah. It costs nearly $1.2 billion and is funded by a private company, Massar International in Palestine, and Qatari investor, Qatari DR. Rawabi is built from the land it's located on, all excavated from this quarry, which is right outside the city. The stones are yellow, white, and gray, prompting the nickname Gold Palestine. Rawabi was built to be an affordable city, 20 to 25% cheaper than Ramallah. There are several different apartment layouts of 55 different sizes. The sizes of the apartments range from 90 square meters to 220 square meters, and prices range from $62,000 to $22,000.
It's open to any Palestinian that wants to buy in Palestine. We do not target any foreigners because this is about Palestinian and the Palestinian people. They've been looking for something advanced, sophisticated. They've been looking for upgrading their standards of living. They deserve better, and they are getting the better.
When it's all done, Rawabi will have 23 neighborhoods, its own school system, a medical center, a mosque and a church, a city center with movie theaters, a pool, a spa, a hotel, and a convention center. And this, a Roman-inspired amphitheater that fits 15,000 people. And we're being told that local Arab musicians are already prepared to take the stage. So far, 2 neighborhoods with 600 housing units are ready to go. 2 more neighborhoods are in the works, and the sites for the 5th and 6th are being excavated.
Our living room.
Khaled Dalanle and his family moved in several weeks ago, one of only several dozen families, which he says sometimes makes the city feel like a ghost town. He and his wife signed the contract 2 years ago. The sign they're holding in this picture reads, "I bought a new house in Rawabi." Today, outside their apartment, the construction continues, but inside, it's home.
When I came home and opened my door, I feel comfortable in my homes. Kids can play in front of my door. Everything is good. Even the construction works beside my home. I feel comfortable.
Alanle is a civil engineer and knows what it takes for a project like this.
This is the first time I faced a huge construction, huge projects being decided in Palestinian territories. And it's a good example for Palestinians who have a good thinking, have a good ambitions for future.
And for the future, this is a new city, and there's still a ways to go.
23 neighborhoods, 6,000 units is the first phase of Rawabi. I believe Rawabi will be like any other city in Palestine. It has no ending. It will continue on growing and developing for the next tens of years.
Amazing. Really amazing. Correspondent Mirav Savir is here with me. Thank you very much for this report.
I was blown away by it.
It's amazing. And just let's start understanding why it took 7 years, because just, let's say just 6 months ago, I think, 7 months ago, Israel was not even willing to put
Yes, so Rawabi is built, obviously the West Bank is split into 3 different sections. It's 90% in Area A, which is completely Palestinian controlled, 10% in areas B and C. So the water pipe is in Area C, and they were having issues with the Israeli government getting permission to have the water pipe go through Area C to get to the city. That was actually solved in March, and that solved a huge problem for the city. Obviously, you need water.
Of course.
But still, located where it is, it's just near an Israeli settlement, Ateret, and they still have problems with the settlement and people living there, giving them issues. They wanted to build a commercial center in this area in the valley, and they're having issues with the settlement nearby about getting permission to do that. So they're still, as they're constructing the city, fighting with the area around them to be able to do what they're doing.
You know what you're asking yourself? Because this area is really, really beautiful. One of the most beautiful areas in this land, in the Holy Land, let's say. How come it's so cheap when if I wanted to buy an apartment in the Israeli side, it would have been 3 times more?
Well, that was the plan that they wanted to do, is they wanted to make it affordable living. They wanted to make people want to come live there. And if you see the land, there's a lot of reasons to come live there and be able to bring the people out of Ramallah, out of Hebron, to come and live in this area. They had to make it cheaper and give people more of an incentive. And when we were talking to Bashar Masli, he was saying, we didn't really have to push people to come. They saw what we're doing with these apartments. They saw how state-of-the-art it is. They're making it a very green city and technologically advanced. When you're talking about wireless internet, they're going to have fiber optics going all throughout the city underground, so it comes into every city. No more water tanks on the building roofs making the city look ugly. They're trying to make it look as aesthetic, as green, and as technologically advanced as possible to bring in foreign.
You know, maybe we can give the Palestinian Authority an idea, maybe to bring families from the Gaza Strip and put them in the city.
Well, that's something that they haven't taken off the table for Rawabi.
And humanitarian aid on the way from the Palestinian side to their own people. Mirav Savir, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Controversy persists over Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server during her time as Secretary of State, and it now involves aides called to testify. ABC News has more.
Hillary Clinton's former State Department Chief of Staff was on Capitol Hill this morning. Cheryl Mills testifying at a closed hearing of the House Select Committee on Benghazi. But another former Clinton aide is going to plead the fifth. Brian Pagliano is a former State Department employee who installed the private email server in Hillary Clinton's home. He's been called to testify before the committee. Pagliano's attorney sent a letter with his intent to the committee's chairman, Trey Gowdy.
I know in the past why people have invoked their Fifth Amendment privilege, but you'll have to ask him why he did. And you're free to to glean whatever inference you want from the fact that he did.
How will this affect Clinton on the campaign trail?
It is a damaging storyline because it contributes to a sense that this is going in unpredictable ways that the campaign can't control.
On the Republican side, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and businessman Donald Trump are still trading barbs.
This is not a guy who is a conservative. No es conservador.
Trump is now slamming Bush for speaking Spanish. He told a conservative website he's a nice man, but he should really set the example by speaking English while in the United States. Bush, who routinely speaks Spanish on the campaign trail, had this response on Good Morning America.
I think Donald Trump is trying to insult his way to the presidency, and it's not going to work.
Bush will hold 2 town halls in New Hampshire today.
Yes, and from American politics to Israeli one. But today we're going to talk because Dr. Hani Zubaydah here wants to speak about Farrah Fawcett, about
Lee Majors.
Steve Austin.
The $6 million man.
And Eli Ochenberg totally agrees with these people's views.
I was born many years after those people were huge stars, so I'm not sure I can contribute a lot to this.
Eli, that just says how old I am.
But I have a lot to say about these Israeli parliament.
Yeah, which was really fun this week. Let's talk about Sharon Gal. Let's talk about Shai Piron. Let's talk about the people who our international viewers really know everything about.
Let me say first that I was wrong. I thought that we will not have a budget. They did pass the budget. However, there's going to be a huge price to pay for the budget that was passed.
Oh.
Yes.
But before we will talk about the budget, let's leave just the budget alone.
But I wanted to say I was wrong.
Let's explain to our viewers who is Shai Piron, who is Sharon Gal, and why it matters if it matters.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah, it really doesn't. No, I'm not sure they will be so happy. No, Shai Piron was the former education minister. He was the number 2 of the newly formed Yesh Atid party led by Yair Lapid, and the collaboration with Shai Piron was his, his great achievement. This is my team. Look at the people I've brought along. They are valuable. They have experience in serving the public. They're not, the original politicians you know and hate, and he's something else. And indeed, he's something else because he is leaving parliament after what was it exactly?
One full term as the Minister of Education and 2 months from his second term. It's a huge shock in Yesh Atid.
He went to India. He had like a soul-searching experience, and decided to leave.
He lost half his weight almost, wore skinny jeans, and started wooing at the conference. But the thing is, the issue with him, he was kind of like the yin of Yair Lapid's yang. He was
But yin and yang. He went to India to do Vipassana, and then he decided that he's leaving the politics.
He was the Shanti of Yair Lapid's roaring water. The thing with Piron, he was important to Yesh Atid because he was talking to this group of voters that Yesh Atid party completely ignores, doesn't really like, regardless of the fact that Yair Lapid went to the Wailing Wall and put on the cube on his hand, the tefillin and so on. It's not the deal. For Yesh Atid, it's a blow. They will need to rethink about their structure, and he was his confidant.
But in general, Sharon Gal is a very different character from Shai Piron. He's a new purchase of Avigdor Lieberman's Israel Beitenu party, a former media entity.
He was an anchor, an economic anchor.
Yeah, maybe this is a better definition.
But he's a media superstar. He is a media superstar. He had his own show. He's one of these news reporters.
But a problematic past with many affairs, and he's not...
Sexual harassment lawsuit, which was not proven in Channel 10. Huge mayhem around him.
A reality TV star as a girlfriend, so he's a kind of a shady character for some. But the mutual thing between them is that Israelis wanted to see something else than the ordinary politicians they know for many years. They wanted some fresh blood, and this is a part of this fresh blood. People who are maybe not built for politics.
It looked like a reality show that people need to vote via SMS to elect one of the parliament members to get into a certain party. It's ridiculous.
Look, what's going on? Shai Piron went through
and I'm not
process.
saying that Shai Piron is the same as Sharon Gal, because there are two different
Thank you. That
people.
was what I was about to say. Let's
people.
detach the two. It's only a coincidence that at the same day they presented their resignation. Shai Piron had a completely different process. I think he couldn't find himself in politics. He didn't like what was going on. He tried for a whole term, and then 2 months, he felt that he really exhausted everything, went out. Sharon Gal is a whole different story. Today, from the grapevine of the news reporter and so on and so forth, it seems that Sharon Gal is disappointed, number one, that Lieberman is not going into the coalition, and as a result, he's not getting anything executive to do. And number two, he's extremely, but extremely disappointed from his salary. And that's a huge issue. Yeah, no, that's not something to be taken lightheadedly, because when George Bush Sr. went into politics, he earned $250,000 a year as the President of the United States.
But he is not George Bush Sr.
Yeah, but he's making... No, and then people asked, why does George Bush goes into politics? What's that? Sharon Gal decided not enough money.
I don't want to hear that. I don't want to speak about
Let's talk about Oren
Let's talk about the budget. Yes, because we have 2 minutes for the budget.
Okay, so the budget passed, and the thing about this budget that not only this budget, but in general, most of the allocations are already pre-promised in any sort of coalition agreements, and that leaves very, very little room for the ministers themselves to decide what to do with the money. And I think this is a way deeper issue about how to spread the budget.
Two major things about the budget: that tax will not be decreased, and one major
neither
issue,
the VAT.
No, neither the VAT. But they are looking for more tax to be collected from the public. However, there's one major issue about this budget which the Treasury Office boys do not like at all. They are pointing at 2.8% of budget deficit in order to compensate, and they're looking at zero growth rate, which people are saying that the growth rate will be negative next year because of the low interest. However, let's wait, because there's another addendum to the budget which will be voted on, and people are saying that this addendum will nullify the budget completely.
Benjamin Netanyahu should be maybe the biggest genius
Wizard
around in the region.
Because next week we're going to talk about Kahlon.
Yes. He is just burying Kahlon.
Agreed.
Deep.
Without even putting an effort.
Agreed.
This is the amazing thing.
Kahlon spent 2 days at Benjamin Netanyahu's office and came out with zero.
Honey, don't you see Lucy's face? We're done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. You see, she understands me.
Oren Chazan. I had to say his name once.
Okay, we're going out. Thank you. We're going out for an update from our news desk, and then we will be back for the third part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the news today. It's the picture that has been seen around the world and sent just waves around people across the globe. A young boy lying motionless, face down on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. The image has become the symbol of a growing human tragedy. Thousands of migrants losing their lives trying to reach Europe. With me right now here in the studios, photographer Kfir Ziv and writer Tzur Shetzaf. Good evening. Thank you very, very much for Shizaf. I'm sorry for coming. And just before we will start this discussion, reporter Niloufer Demir, working for the Turkey's Dogan news agency, took the photo of the Syrian toddler that's now become somewhat famous. Here she speaks about the photo and more of journalist work there.
3-year-old Aylan Kurdi was lying lifeless face down in the surf, in his red t-shirt and dark blue shorts, folded to his waist. The only thing I could do was to make heard his outcry. At that moment, I believed I would be able to achieve this by triggering the shutter of my camera, and took his picture. Galip was lying 100 meters ahead of his brother. I approached him this time. I noticed they didn't have any life jackets on them, any arm floats, anything to help them to float in the water. This image was showing how dramatic this incident was. We were covering the illegal transition of migrants to Greek islands of Kos from Bodrum coast. On September 2nd, I was on duty, and I also have taken footage of a group of Pakistani migrants in attempt to cross into Greece. While witnessing the tragedy, suddenly we noticed the lying lifeless bodies. We recognized the bodies belonged to toddlers. We were shocked. We felt sorrow over them. The best thing to do was to make this tragedy heard.
Yes. We need, it's always watching these images in the last few days. It was somehow for a lot of people a little bit too much. Is it too much? Should we feel that maybe it's a lot? Maybe we should not see this. Maybe we should not show this. Maybe we should blur it.
Well, I would say that we must show these images, and we must show, and I don't think that you need even to blur it. I think that you should look at the face of death of a very young child who was attempting to get a new life, and instead of it got his death. And I think this is the mission of journalism. This is the mission of any photographer, any writer, anybody who's doing the job, because Europe just shut its gates, and there is something that I don't think that the world is speaking enough about. This is the industry of smugglers who are earning millions and even billions of dollars in pushing people into the death in too small boats and rough seas and just sucking the life out of them, and the Europeans were just, staying aside like it's not their problem.
I'm trying to imagine what went through the photographer's mind the minute that
when he actually did a click and he actually looked and focused and he was actually aware what he's about to do.
Yes.
It's a tough moment. I mean, I've been in those type of moments many, many times as a photographer for the Israeli Defense Force as part of my military service. It's a tough moment, but when you're at the moment and when you see something so shocking, you must do something about it. And the only thing that you can do is to take a picture.
The camera protects you in one way?
In many ways. You're behind the camera, you don't even see what's going on. You just see the full frame and you try to catch and capture the right moment and find the right angles. You're not 100% aware of what's going on. You basically, sometimes you're actually doing it on automat. You're not even there. You just have a camera in your hand and you take the shots.
Do you think that there is a difference? Because we're always discussing about the images that, for example, other networks are showing. For example, in Al Jazeera, during wars, they will put on their TV screens the bodies of bloody images, the bodies of children. They won't blur it. They won't try to change or to show it from another angle. Do you think that this image is different? Maybe.
Yes, it is different. It's not the same case. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but it is not. It's not the same case. When you look at what Daesh are doing on their, let's say, YouTube, and what Al Jazeera are doing when they want to provoke or to advertise something, this is something totally different, because this is, a lot of times, it's almost pornography of journalism and of photography. But in this case, when you have something which is so right, it's so just to show it, and this image, and we must be true about it, this is the image that broke the wall. This is the image that is going to open, it's going to open the gates of Europe. Now, from my experience, in '91 I was sent to Somalia. In Somalia there was hunger, there was civil war, everything. We took pictures, which this one is a naive one in comparison to the pictures that were shown in the world media on that day. So there is a bit of, being politically correct about this image, which is very, very important image. Now, she just happened to be the photographer. But look at it. We're speaking about it, and it is opening the gate. It might change the situation. And this is the important, and no need to blur it.
I completely agree with Tzur. I think this is it. I mean, it's a change, And this is the change. This is what's going on right now. People actually getting the awareness of what's going on with Daesh, and it's a shocking image. And once you have a shocking image, you have so many things starting to open, and people talk about it, and it's like it's a beginning of something.
So you're saying that when we are deciding to stop showing the videos of Daesh and the photos that Daesh is taking out, this is a statement.
Must be a limit. There must be a limit.
And maybe this is a statement by saying we're not cooperating with terror, but this is we are showing the brutal reality. We are showing how brutal we adults are.
Completely.
This is the consequence. What we're seeing here is the consequence of Daesh. We should not promote Daesh, but we should show how people suffer because of Daesh.
They're running
now,
away.
this is the picture of a boy that is running away from Syria and he drowned in the sea because he couldn't live there anymore. I don't want to support Daesh. I want to support these people. Now this is,
not only Daesh, it's also Assad and
it doesn't matter. No, but yeah, exactly. But what I'm saying is, like, this is life. These are the victims, and I'm for the victims. I'm not for the people who makes the victim victimized.
100%.
I'm trying, just before we're finishing, do you think that you as photographers, do you think that you have limits? Like there will be some kind of a point where you will get and you will say, this I'm not participating in?
It depends what you're calling participating, because whenever you're doing the work, as Kfir said, you're just doing the work. Now, I've been to massacres in Kosovo, I've been to Somalia, to Afghanistan, to Syria, to Iraq. I've seen a lot of bodies. Now, there is a difference between what you shoot when you are at work and what you decide to show the world. Now, of course, I have my decisions. There are things that I cannot show, like if I was in a massacre in Kosovo, there are pictures that I just cannot show. And I will not participate with Daesh, with beheading people. But this is something else.
For you?
I agree. I mean, somebody need to edit those shots. Usually it's the editor works that he's actually doing it for you. But you as a photographer, you're the only one on set. You have the obligation to do it. No one else can see it except you. And you need to show it to the world. And you have one chance to do it.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for this conversation. And I'm speechless. Each and every time that I'm seeing it. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
The Israeli-Arab conflict has, on more than one occasion, left its mark on the field of sports, but once in a while, this subject generates some good news. Salah Hasarma has been appointed the first Arab soccer manager of a team from the Jewish community playing in Israel's top league. Shai Ben Ari met him today in Kiryat Shmona.
He's an unassuming character, but he's nonetheless making Israeli sports history. Salah Hasarma is an Israeli Arab soccer manager, appointed this summer as the head coach of Hapoel Kiryat Shmona. Other Israeli Arabs have managed in the top league, but only with teams openly identified with the Arab sector, like Bnei Sechnin. Hasarma is the first to break the barrier, managing a top-flight team from a predominantly Jewish community.
Whether I'm breaking down barriers or not, I hope so. I wish for Arab managers and managers in general to progress, to coach in the top league, to succeed, being an example, a trailblazer. I really don't think about all of the surrounding issues. I've just come to work and to succeed with the club where I grew up and spent 10 years.
Kiryat Shmona is not just another Israeli town. It is less than a kilometer from the Lebanese border, and for many years was the target of hundreds of Hezbollah rockets. But things are quieter these days.
Here in Kiryat Shmona, people don't care where a player is from. If he's Arab, foreign, Bolivian, Brazilian, it's a very special changing room. It's one family, one team, and that's the secret to our success for all these years.
The former defender joined the club in 2006, immediately after the Second Lebanon War, and played here for 7 seasons. He established himself as a popular and well-respected club symbol. Kiryat Shmona's facilities are not exactly state-of-the-art, and the club's budget does not come near those of richer teams from Israel's major cities. Still, in recent years, the team has established itself as one of the best in Israel, against all odds, finishing second last season. In 2012, they won the national championship for the first time, despite not having any big names in the roster.
We weren't stars. There weren't a lot of big sums being thrown around. Not a lot of crazy money. Nothing. We went out as a unit. We did the work. We ran. We covered each other. We beat the big teams. We did amazing things that year, and that's what won us the championship.
The secret to the team's success may have something to do with the calm atmosphere, far removed from the distracting hustle and bustle of major urban centers.
Part of it is everyone here lives in Kiryat Shmona with their families, and sometimes we visit one another. It's possible this contributes to a positive atmosphere, that togetherness, and makes the club special.
Hasarma is just starting out, but when asked about potentially breaking another barrier and one day managing the Israeli national team, he didn't rule out the option.
I'm still in the beginning of the road. It's my first year. Let me do my work in quiet to succeed with my team, and later, the sky's the limit.
And with me right now is Jonathan Regev. Jonathan, we have 20 seconds only because people are saying that we're saying hello for a really long time, so only 20 seconds.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So a quick update from yesterday.
Yes, we spoke about Tom Brady yesterday in the Deflategate case. So the judge today, just a few hours ago, said his punishment from the NFL is wrong. It should not have been done. Therefore, Tom Brady will play with the champions New England Patriots next Thursday in the opening match.
Perfect. So, European football qualifier.
Yes, the game between Israel and Andorra in Group B is just about to begin in Haifa in about 20 minutes. At the same time, Belgium will host Bosnia in Brussels. Also a big game. Israel has a decent chance of qualifying, only because third place also goes to playoffs. So therefore, first let's hope Israel beats Andorra. Second,
everybody in the control room are laughing right now.
What's this in? He says he understands sports. What is he saying? We have no chance ever.
What are you talking about?
They are right, I should say. We will also watch the game in Brussels, cheer for Belgium, because basically Israel and Bosnia are fighting for third place. And I will say no more.
Stop smiling because it will not happen.
Yes, Israel will qualify, of course. Never.
It will never happen.
Yes.
Andorra? Yeah, Andorra? Yeah. Okay, yes. South Africa.
South Africa.
Let's talk about people that really know.
Yes. The national team of South Africa, the Springboks in rugby, they're heading to the World Championship in rugby, which begins in England in 2 weeks, but only after a judge allowed that. Why was it appealed to court? Because there has to be a certain quota of about 50% players of color. That's what the team is trying to impose, and yet the major, still 20 years after that epic win in 1995 with Invictus, with the movie about it, still a big majority of the players in the Springboks are white. I don't think it has to do with racism, but about money. It's a game for, it's hard. It's not like football where you can play on the streets.
Yeah, and you want to show us somebody who's dancing.
Novak Djokovic, he won his match in the second round of the US Open against Andreas Hauer from Austria. This is what he does at the end. It's the Gangnam Style, by the way.
It's good. He looks like he's dancing an Israeli dance.
Yes, and
or an Arab dance.
He had, by the way, an Israeli coach. Maybe that's the reason. But Novak Djokovic, he is the best tennis player in the world, and yet he does not take himself too seriously. He knows, hey, it's about business. It's about fun, sports. That's what we do. We go dancing at the end of a match.
30 seconds. 30 seconds to finish.
So
Israel, really.
Yes,
Israel.
Yes. Let's beat Andorra first, and then we'll see.
Jonathan Regev, thank you very much. And thank you, our viewers, for being with us tonight. We will be back on Sunday from the Jaffa Port. Have peace. Have a quiet, wonderful weekend.